Fear always overrides everything. It's just always the cloud there of where's the money gonna come from. And when we first started to build a pool conferences back in 2005, we immediately identified this. Um, One of the pricing models or business models is a subsidized model. That's the university or the park district model to where they, for some reason, don't want to program it like a business so that it covers its operational expenses. They basically throw it into this model that is going to run us, we're going to run short on the budget, $400,000 a year, and we have to go into our general funds to keep that running. You know, is that a viable option? Obviously, because it's the one the country's had the longest. High schools built pools right after World War II, and they were subsidized by the high school and subsidized by federal money and state money and all that. But I'm not too sure how sustainable that is as we go forward, because right now, when we talk to the mayors and some of the leading politicians at the city level or the county level, they tell us that they have money to treat the three major things that are important to their citizens. Number one, police. Number two, fire. Number three, streets. Okay.
You can't argue with that.
After that, they're out of money. Okay. Because everything has gone up so much and cost of living, although we all complain about it, hasn't kept pace. I think it's a model that can't go away. I think it's a model that if we're going to, in this country, have outdoor and or indoor 50-meter pools, they almost have to, go into the subsidized model. We're dependent upon the university and the parks and recs in the cities to do those quote event centers. Now we do have private sector indoor 50 meters that are for training only, and that makes sense if you're in an area that can put 1,000 swimmers on your swim team and you had the other warmer water pools to support it with programming. But I think we've been dependent upon that model of subsidy too long. And I think that we need to start looking at the private sector, at entrepreneurial coaches and entrepreneurial larger clubs. And a lot of them have done this with us, that they've built their own training facilities. And so they don't have to worry necessarily about getting up in the morning and that the city voted to close the pool because they own their training facility. It's not a meat facility usually, but it's a training facility, for health and wellness. I think that's the model that we've been gravitating towards. It doesn't need to replace the other model. It needs to support pools so that we have an alternative when the city says no, when a bond gets voted down. Right now, only 16% of bond issues that have to do anything with swimming pools pass. The rest of them fail already. 50% of the people don't swim and don't want anything to do with it and don't want their money going for it. And so that's always a challenge. If the private sector doesn't step forward, we're basically going to be in a shortage of pools 10 years from now, like we couldn't imagine. We have done ourselves as coaches a disservice sometimes by thinking that the only way we can have success in aquatics is to have an indoor 50-meter pool, because that financial model is not usually something
Sustainable.
that works. There are exceptions, but we've done ourselves a disservice. A lot of times you hear people, well, Mick Nelson doesn't like long course swimming. No, Mick Nelson doesn't like $900,000 shortfalls for the swimming pool because it's not going to be there in a few years. They're going to close it down. So let's look at how we develop swimming. As it's 25 yards and stretch pools for diving and water polo don't have to take up 50,000 square feet. They can be planned and programmed so that they service the entire community. we have so many swim schools that have those 50-foot and 60-foot single warmer water 87-degree pools that we're not effectively working with our swim organizations, our private sector, the 500 different franchises and individuals out there that are running swim schools. I think that they've got a thing that if they did the age group kids, the 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, and even 9-year-olds in that warmer water, can still train in those and then get them to the high school. All you've got is a gap of about 4 years between the swim school and the high school experience for those that aren't lucky enough to be able to afford the fees for a USA Swim Club. And I think that gap of that 4 years between the ages of, 8, 12, 9, and 13 until we can get them into a high school program, I think that's where we need to be concentrating a lot of our time and energy at. And I don't think we do as good of a job as we can, especially locally, with, good communication between high school coaches, USA swim coaches, and swim instructors. I think we need a little bit better planning, a little bit better camaraderie, and let's get that plan so the kids don't fall off, the soccer ledge during that 3 and 4 years before we can get them in as high school athletes. So, that's another part of programming. There'll be people smarter, younger than us coming up, hopefully, through the ranks that also see this and that say, hey, we need to take the bull by the horns. We need to control our own destinies.
When I watch social media, and I know you're on there all the time as well, and you see these coaches who they've either been burnt out or they have to leave their career because they can't make it on an assistant coaches and part-time. You can't do it. And I can't believe I am the only coach out there that started out as swim instructor, then a coach, and then because of financial issues with our facility, looked the other places and became that certified fitness instructor. Then we went into therapy. That whole realm, that is what my message is to the coaches, that you are so valuable to the aquatic center or whoever owns that pool that you can add fitness, which is going to enhance not only what the programs at the center have, but it will help your swim team. And I don't think there's enough individual coaches out there who get that. So that's my message this year, is to not only, along with the Aquatic Health Club model, bring our coaches into it. And that brings all of the pillars together instead of them being all by themselves.
Is we've got over 65,000 pools in this country that are not being used effectively. Many of them are seasonal outdoor pools that could easily be converted to a seasonal indoor 6-month, outdoor 6-month pool and use it. We're not going to train, the Olympics in there, but we're going to teach swimming and train different things with aquatic skills. 65,000 that if an entrepreneurial coach, the head of a president of a swim club wanted to approach these pools that are financially struggling anyway, rather than close them, let's get a creative partnership going so we effectively increase your income, cover your operational costs, possibly cover and or heat the pool, and let's put this together so that it's an asset for the community and it also is self-supporting. In other words, it doesn't need to be doing fundraisers every month to be able to try to exist. Those models that we've worked with are out there. So we need to look around and pay attention in our own communities rather than saying, well, we're out of pools and they're closing this and closing that. Hey, if they're closing them, find out when they're closing them and get in a negotiation to open them with a better business plan or better programming plan.
You don't have to have a traditional school age learn to swim program. Let's bring it in with the whole spectrum of like a PE class. You're going to learn swimming. You're going to learn about water properties of water. You're going to do vertical exercise, get them interested in it instead of a lesson structure just in one. It's open out there for you to do that. And everybody just wants to keep doing the same thing, same thing. So specialty programming is really out there that can help.
This whole thing started with the drowning issue and everything. And these things are you can't separate the two. You really can't. The pool situation, the facility situation, the business situation, and then the drowning prevention, they just totally depend on one another. And one of my advices is that when people go out and start talking to, one of these 65,000 pools that are underused, they're going into a motel saying, can I rent water for 3 hours Monday through Thursday to teach swimming lessons? Okay. The message needs to start with, we're trying to prevent children drowning in the USA. Now, saying children sort of limits that, and you really mean all drownings, but the child drownings in the USA tends to be more noticeable by more people. Okay, just like, car seats, seatbelts, and that kind of stuff, mostly for children. If we can get these people to go out there and talk about drowning prevention, and then our aquatic health and wellness for adults and our aquatic sports can ride on the coattails of that. Because I tell you, you're not going to get a lot of people in any community to vote on a pool that's not going to be financially sustainable or that offers them something personally. Is not usually going to happen. I always go through the mythical mall table or the health fair table scenario, is that we're trying to get Nelson's Turtle Swim Club's trying to build their own pool, and they want to have a table there and promote this. It's the greatest sport, better grades, healthier people, safer people. This is where our lifeguards, we got all the pluses in the world, but half the people walking by, I can't get to stop because they're not interested in sports.
Swimming.
So, okay. Now, if I change that thing into children drowning prevention and that issue and present it properly, it's hard for someone to say, I can look at someone that's a potential advocate and say, are you interested in a healthier teenagers and children and competitive aquatic sports? And again, half of them are going to say no. If I look at the same adult and go, are you interested in keeping our children safe and preventing drowning? If they say no, they're a bad person. Get out of here. Okay. And they don't, they go, hey, yeah, okay. Now we got attention. And we tell people, if you talk about competitive swimming in your pitch in the first 10, 15 minutes, you're doing yourself a disservice. That's down the road. And all I have to do is change that 60-foot pool to a 75-foot pool. And all I have to do is this and that. And now look at the financial picture. But the attention grabbing thing is, the good stats and the great support for drowning prevention. That's the foot in the door.
In Pennsylvania, we lost the Keystone pool.
Yeah.
It was a training 50-meter pool, open for a couple years, and then they pulled the plug. I guess they couldn't sustain it. That's sad. But in my city, I think our Pittsburgh Public Schools, a big urban school district, has more than 12 pools that are pretty much idle evenings, weekends, summers, and that's been really the thorn under my saddle for a long time. Just so maybe an approach with a aquatic health club to all these pools, but I just don't see them having the political will to care enough to.
I know.
Because so people think, most of our public sector, I think most of our city pools that have been our projects that have been a success, almost every single one of them, the mayor or the commissioner had kids that were on a swim team.
Yeah.
Or they were a master swimmer. They didn't want to do it for personal reasons, but because they had experience, they knew the value of it that the average person didn't. When you have a person that's only looking at a dollar figure on a pro forma, on a spreadsheet that says this is the kind of thing that we're going to need to be subsidized for the first 3 years and come out of city funds, best of luck to you. Now, can we improve that? Can the Keystone pool, can those 12 high school pool, what if they had built a 20-foot wide by 50-foot long warmer water teaching pool for kids and adults to exercise in, ramp and stairs? They think they would really care less about what the big pool's doing, because that pool brings in 75% of the income in any facility. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't ignorance. It was just part of evolution, where we need 2 water temperatures. We can't put adults in 80-degree water, and we can't put competitive swimmers in 88-degree water, unless they're a sprinter, and they'll end up sitting on the side with their arms up on the tub talking. We need 2 water temperatures. We have portable pools that go on the deck that can supplement some of these. There's all kinds of things for existing pools, but you hit the nail on the head. We need somebody at the upper level and be able to function in the political process to be able to get traction for something like this. This is a one-on-one type thing. If I talk in a room of mythical number, 100 coaches, I may have 2 coaches come up afterwards that they heard something someone else didn't. They heard that I could make this into something that would be valuable, and I may be able to somehow do it for the rest of my life. And how do I do that? The other 98 are going to have to wait until they're in crisis management mode and they've lost their pool, they've lost something, and then it's actually too late to put together, a good long-range plan. This is a one-on-one, 2-on-1 type thing, and that's what we expect. Every time we do a Build a Pool conference, we get about 3. Doesn't matter if we put 60 people in a room or 20 people in a room. We get about 3 good potential projects, and it's not because of the project's attributes, it's because of the person that's in the room. And I think that's the same thing with everything we do in aquatics. We have to have that unique person, and we can name them off the top from our experience when we were coaching. We could name those people. Most of them were in a collegiate ranking, but at the same time they were still USA AAU or USA swim clubs. They got the overall picture. Those are becoming kind of fewer, and we need to make sure that when those people want the information, that somebody's there to give them good, practical, non-biased information about how to move forward. And that's what we do. As we told you, our mantra when we first started, programming precedes design. It's not what you need to do, it's what you need to do, not the physical pool. It's what you need to do to make your career a success.
You've been listening to Jump Cut number 40 of the podcast Heavy or Not, the OG Swim Guide. And that has been Mick Nelson and his wife Sue Nelson, formerly of USA Swimming. Mick and Sue live in Colorado Springs and run their own business, Total Aquatic Programming, totalaquatic.llc. Check out their Build a Pool program, as well as a course that they're going to teach after the ASCA clinic in the fall about business management for swim coaches. But most of all, you can turn back the podcast to episode number 37, 38, and a future one is also going to feature some of the discussions with Mick and Sue. So please subscribe, comment upon, refer, recommend the podcast so we can grow the conversation and grow our community.